is that having overcome the bottlenecks that stood in our way, we must now prepare for the present challenges and have our eyes on the areas that we are going to face as pressing areas. This is why we are placing our focus on technology. It is our firm belief that the emerging technologies will shape the way we live and the way we interact with the future. For this reason, we first hosted a similar conference in May last year, and in April this year, a point that has already been made by a number of speakers, whose work will guide our policy direction in this area that we are discussing. Your Excellency, President Bi, I wish to applaud you for your passion about the role of technology and the fourth industrial revolution in the future of our people and in human capital development. I therefore commend you on this endeavor and trust that we will work together in facilitating our two countries. It is important to emphasize three areas, three aspects, 3 points in this regard. One, the approaches we take in our two countries and on the continent must be deliberate, intentional, and progressive. Number two, we must ensure that our young people are at the forefront of these technologies, and we should not be just consumers. Let's take a front row position. We must pay attention to the opportunities presented by these technologies. So we have stood when things are moving for a long time. This time we must move. We must be in the same direction and even be ahead if necessary. We must view the fourth industrial revolution as a paradigm shift that enhances those foundations that already exist, not one that replaces them. Thus, we must adapt our approaches without compromising our values and the gains that we have already made. In so doing, our focus should be on how to utilize these technologies to accelerate the gains I highlighted. And these are some of the gains and how we should focus. How will artificial intelligence help us improve our healthcare and confront the impediments that stand in our way? And I'm glad a number of discussants have also made reference to this. Number two, how will blockchain and the other technologies enable us to confront the challenges of unemployment and also to beef up, increase household income? Any consideration of the fourth industrial revolution technologies must be based on the strengthening of those gains that have been registered so far and not on exposing us to the risks that could wipe out years of the progress so far made. As African leaders, we are prepared to provide leadership at the African Union to ensure that our countries work together in building not just the Africa we want, but the Africa that our people actually need. Your Excellency and distinguished guests, I once again welcome you to Uganda and obviously to this conference. And I wish you fruitful deliberations. It's now my great pleasure to say one word or two about His Excellency Julius Bio, who is our guest today and who is paying a state visit to Uganda. As you have already heard, he's obviously the president of Sierra Leone. And I just want to point out that at a tender age of 31 years, and that was in March 1996, he took over as the head of state and a military junta government in Sierra Leone. And then he voluntarily, after putting things in order, handed over power to the civilian population. He took off some time and went for studies and is a holder of a master's degree in international affairs. It may be good for us in Uganda to know that he is a strong and practicing Catholic, married to a strong and practicing First Lady Fatima, who is a practicing Muslim. I think this provides us a good example to emulate, especially our country, which has similar configuration in terms of religions as Sierra Leone. It is therefore my great pleasure to take this opportunity to invite Your Excellency Julius Bio to come and address this gathering, which is anxiously waiting to listen to you. Your Excellency Bio.
When we decided that we should have a Directorate of Science, Technology and Innovation, it was because we know that the 21st century is going to be about technology, technology, technology. It is very important for us to have a skilled labor force. I normally say you are not fit for purpose in the 21st century if you do not have quality education. In quality education, an aspect of it is actually having the requisite training, skills, and knowledge to be able to be employed. Development itself is such a complex, complicated issue that it has to be properly informed. We are not only using big data to inform decisions, we are actually mining data, we are doing data analytics, we are looking at blockchain to help us in decision making, and a lot of other things. This is about education for girls. This is the map of Sierra Leone, and the higher these pillars, the greater the number of girls that are out of school. This is the first 3D printer in Sierra Leone. We have to take that quantum leap to catch up with the rest of the world using technologies like this. All development decisions are actually informed by the data we are collecting, and we can actually play around with that data in all its forms, either in print or in physical, to help us make proper decisions about development in Sierra Leone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister present here today, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to stand on existing protocols. First, I bring you warm greetings from the Republic of Sierra Leone. But I'm indeed happy to be here because I know the Cranes are in the knockout stages of the African Nations Cup. I wish you every luck. We are here at the generous invitation of His Excellency General Yoweri Museveni, whose progressive vision of harnessing and integrating African economies ahead of the fourth industrial revolution is truly inspirational. Some would quip that while Europe was inventing the steam engine and building circuit board factories in the second and third industrial revolutions, Africans were still hunting animals with spears and drumming around fires at night and telling stories. Yes, Africans can entertain themselves. Yes, Africans like good food, especially good meat. But that is not the whole truth. Those same European historians will probably not tell you that for hundreds of years, Europeans systematically depopulated Africa of its young into gulags in the New World. African youths produce the raw material that fueled the European industrialization. African minerals and other wealth fueled the next phase of industrialization when the West forcefully dominated and destabilized Africa. In spite of political independence, African nations remain victims of exploitation, recipients of technology, and recipients of products of technology. They participated in the global economy as inferiors, or as His Excellency the President Yoweri Museveni said 2 days ago, as slaves. Africans neither participated in the market of ideas, nor did they invest in the future or lead the technical sectors. The narrative has begun to change since about the year 2000. We have had fewer than 20 years to catch up. But catch up we will, and that is our challenge. Africa has the unique fortune of having an abundance of natural and human resources. With 1.2 billion people, and most of them young people growing up as native technologists, there is suddenly a unique opportunity to lead in generating and translating new ideas through technology and innovation. Africa has a great opportunity at adopting new technologies to achieve unimaginable leaps of the development axis. Artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, blockchain, quantum computing, biotechnology, bioinformatics, 3D printing are some of the technologies changing the global economy, global governance, and even global security. Coupled with rapid automation, these technologies are significantly modifying our existing traditional notions of governance and government, and also development. The advances in science, technology, and innovation are shaping the world faster than many industries and governments can react or have reacted to. They are introducing new possibilities, new efficiencies, and new risks. Countries are now faced with the task of preparing themselves to fully participate in this new global economy. The good news is that the Western countries aren't far along. We are all learning within the same scale, as previous speakers have said. But let us briefly consider the imperatives, why Africa should prepare itself for the fourth industrial revolution. Most of Africa's development challenges have to do with weak institutions, bad or ineffective policies, failures to leverage the possibility of trade, integration, and other forms of cooperation, corruption, including the misuse of national resources, the misuse of aid, illicit financial flows, perceived or rare injustice, including land and property disputes, failures in developing human capital, and failures in public service delivery. Think about the real values of those inefficiencies and losses in monetary terms. According to the African Union report, corruption alone cost Africa upward of $150 billion. Misuse of aid upward of $20 billion. Bad or ineffective policies, billions of dollars. Misuse of resources and illicit financial flows, billions of dollars. Failure to develop human capital, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of future earnings. Added to that, corruption alone increased the cost of investment, the cost of doing business, and it can also foster civil unrest, which is always inordinately expensive. The lack of financial inclusion and inefficient revenue mobilization within countries make it even harder to break the cycle of poverty. Agriculture, small-scale manufacturing, trade, energy generation, infrastructure and city planning, healthcare, immigration, education, social welfare, banking, and even efficient governance are all possible use cases that can benefit from these new technologies. That is why I'm happy to be here today to think, learn, and to imagine with you. Imagine a government blockchain, a peer-to-peer network of decentralized public databases where each transaction is stored in a chain. Whenever data on one node is altered, the change must be validated right across all the nodes in the chain. One is therefore able to audit and trace the changes in the chain, thereby ensuring transparency of records through process integrity and security. As a consequence, that also speeds up transaction while reducing transaction costs. Imagine the possibility and the implications for the fight against corruption or transactions that are never and can never be audited because somebody destroys the paper trail. Clearly, there are many use cases for blockchain and other fourth industrial revolution technologies in a small nation like mine, where we have identified corruption, red tape, and institutional inefficiencies, among others I mentioned earlier as the key barriers to development. So let me demonstrate a few more use cases. One is digital identity and identifier systems. This will facilitate good national budgeting, resource allocation, financial inclusion, adequate catering for public services, and even help cut down on voter fraud during elections. It would also provide reliable demographic data on which policy decisions can be based. Transactions, financial and banking, property, trade volumes, taxes, and land can be recorded and verified in a transparent manner. Healthcare, social and public service, and education records can be also accessed, recorded, tracked, and verified for people, removing third-party costs to recipient, as it is the case in other countries. Governance decision processes and transactions across different government, local and national, can be fully recorded, verified, and tracked. This assured continuity of governance will further strengthen our governance institutions, thereby lowering a number of existing governance threats. While a public blockchain is generally decentralized, I'm aware that some countries like Estonia, Finland have developed a centralized, control, interoperable, and also integrated platforms. I recently sent a team in Estonia, e-governance in Estonia. The Estonians have incentivized digitization to a level where there is a lot more efficiency, citizens' participation in governance, and faster public service delivery through secure networks that involve governance and private sector institutions. This is the ultimate goal of any government: service delivery and citizens' engagement, and blockchain holds that promise. There are rare opportunities in 3D printing for data visualization, as you saw over there, modeling, small-scale manufacturing, and medical uses. We just applied a new use case in Sierra Leone, 3D printing for policy decision-making. The other day, my team and I used the 3D printer, which you saw, to print a complex display of data representing the distribution of girls who are not in schools in each chiefdom in our country. The 3D printed model was used in conversations with several policymakers who screens or devices could not have presented properly. The Internet of Things can be used to manage smarter grids, secure verification, manage water resources, collect and manage waste, collect tolls, or to manage infrared security. Through the ongoing decentralized and renewable grid projects that are deployed in collaboration with the United Nations, the Ministry of Energy is working with partners to ensure that smart meters serving as Internet of Things sensors give us better insight into the energy demands associated with rural development. Equally, we are using AI for informing our policies in education, identity verification, and healthcare delivery. The uses of the fourth industrial revolution technologies are limitless and extend from innovation in the production of new outputs that can be deployed to development, to supporting agriculture and crop production, value addition, and several other sectors of production. But this transition to digital must be agile, well-directed and abundantly resourced within a vision that is developed with the people who will benefit from it, within a vision centered in Africa, with a view to what makes us Africans and how we wish to define our place in the fourth industrial revolution. So what should African countries do to prepare? First, there is the overarching policy context. Over the last 2 decades, several countries and regional institutions in Africa have developed policies for information, communication, and technology, e-governance, and digitization. These policies have been domesticated in some countries and now constitute the national digital vision of various governments. In Sierra Leone, the first National Telecommunications Act was developed in 2006, it provided for establishing institutions for the implementation of ICT transformation of Sierra Leone under the supervision of the Ministry of Information and Communication. An ICT policy was developed in 2009, followed by 2017 update that included cybersecurity and e-government framework. Secondly, we know that governments should craft national digitization strategies that are specific to their own development needs. In Sierra Leone, we developed a national innovation and digital strategy involving the government of Sierra Leone as primary stakeholders in collaboration with relevant policy, technology, and research institutions in the public and private sectors. This 10-year vision will be regularly updated as the technology landscape evolves and the activities described in the document are accomplished. This vision will be complemented by a clear strategic set of activities, targets, and work plans across the country. However, we need to develop and align these strategies across our regions and across the continent. Thirdly, Africa has a young population, and investing in human capital development through education, healthcare, and food security will help develop a strong cohort of skilled workers who will drive and careers by offering them full scholarships when they apply to university. Women constitute 51% of our population, and they must be given the opportunity to lead this drive. Also, government must anticipate emerging technology penetration by setting up institutions that can provide leadership for driving the fourth industrial initiatives. In Sierra Leone, I set up a Directorate of Science, Technology, and Innovation in the Office of the President, and is headed by a young MIT Harvard scientist and inventor. The objective is to make Sierra Leone an innovation nation, a nation where agile, exploratory, and research-driven startups and initiatives led by young people can experiment at the appropriate scale. We aim to encourage entrepreneurship by incentivizing the creation and use of new opportunities. Furthermore, government must also invest in infrastructure that supports the fourth industrial revolution, including electricity generation and ICT penetration and access to connectivity. In Sierra Leone, an initial national fiber backbone infrastructure was developed to connect various regions of the country via an international consortium of development partners, government, and the private sector. Internet penetration and access is improving. Additionally, government must study best practices and use cases in peer countries and other countries that have successfully deployed fourth revolution technologies and see what to adopt for specific development contexts. Finally, government must be attentive to the regulatory and legal gray zones around data governance, data security, data transfer, data storage, and data access. Often, this would not involve writing entirely new laws. We cannot regulate the technology, but we can build safe framework that allow equity and security in the use and application of technology, as has been already alluded to by one of our panelists. We are a small nation in West Africa working hard to do big things with science, technology, and innovation. We are trying to catch up with the rest of the world, the developed world, by taking advantage of technology. So let me use this opportunity to invite all of you to come to Sierra Leone, to seed your ideas, deploy prototypes, and scale the many wonderful ideas you will learn and develop as this very amazing conference continues. Thank you, and I wish you a successful deliberation.
Your Excellency, if I may please invite you to have a seat. Thank you. That's right. And there comes the Right Honorable Prime Minister. May I please also invite Dr. Elsie to kindly join us? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give another warm applause for that intervention? Now, good afternoon. My name is Rosa Malango. I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator in the Republic of Uganda. And it's a distinguished honor and pleasure to be here today to facilitate a brief conversation between the leaders that we have here. So once again, to His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone, welcome to the Pearl of Africa. Uganda also happens to be, as we call it, the cradle of the SDGs, because it was actually under the presidency of Uganda, the General Assembly, that the world came together to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals. So you are welcome, Your Excellency. To the Right Honorable Prime Minister, thank you once again for being with us. You are Dr. Elsie, we've heard from you. You're a champion and advocate. Everywhere I've gone on this continent where we're discussing the future, you are there. So thank you once again for being present here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a brief conversation with our leaders. The intent of this session is to hear a little bit more about how the African states are preparing their nations, their communities, and their partners for the fourth industrial revolution. How can we prepare ourselves to make sure that the fourth industrial revolution advances the Sustainable Development Goals as well as Agenda 2030? Ladies and gentlemen, Uganda is known to have at present 40 million people, in addition to being home to 1.1 million refugees. 78% of that population is under the age of 30. This means we have a strong potential to contribute, lead, and be part of this industrial revolution. But we are also here today to talk about the African continent. Africa today has 1.2 billion people. But the estimates say that by 2050, we will be 2.4 billion. And by 21,000, Africa will contribute to more than half of the world's growth. With this in mind, what does it mean and where do we stand with this new phase of the revolution. So allow me to start by asking His Excellency the President for your views on two questions. Your Excellency, from your point of view, what is the role of African states in preparing for the fourth industrial revolution, including the issue of cybersecurity and the impact on development?
Thank you very much. In the use of technology, I think the young generation has taken the lead. As government, what we need to do is to provide that enabling environment, an ecosystem that supports them and give them the resources. They have taken the leadership, rightly so, and most of our young people are actually more effective and more conversant with the technologies that are here today. As leaders, we should recognize that and give them the support. That is why, in fact, in my office, I created the Office of Science, Technology, and Innovation. And a very young man who is a graduate of MIT, who is an inventor himself, is leading that one. And I give him the free hand to propose and to do things right across the spectrum of governance in my country. I think we should just provide that ecosystem that gives them the freedom to lead when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution.
Thank you very much. Right Honorable Prime Minister, Uganda is well known as a champion of Pan-African values around the world on different issues. Would you please share with us, how do you believe Uganda can champion the adoption of the value chain approach to industrialization?
Well, for a very long time, Africa has been exporting raw materials. We started by Africans being sold.
That's raw material.
That was the first raw material, unfortunately, that helped develop the Western world. Secondly, we started with cotton, coffee, and the like, and we exported it to support the industries in Europe. So Uganda is championing the cause of value addition in order to put a stop to this hemorrhage of resources where work hard, export cheap raw materials, they pay us peanuts, and instead of us becoming rich, we become poorer, where they are becoming richer. So the purpose, the objective, the crusade of Uganda, and I believe Sierra Leone and Africa, is to reverse this.
Thank you, Right Honorable. Elsie, you get the easy one. Many times when we're talking about revolutions, everybody talks about the role of the private sector going forward. We have just heard from two leaders of state from the point of view of the government. Could you please explain to us, in your view, what should be the role of the private sector in helping African states to make the fourth industrial revolution a reality?
Easy question. I will build on what our leaders have mentioned. It starts with the ecosystem. So the foundation and the space that policymakers can provide plays a critical role in enabling the private sector to step in and also contribute. I'll give an example of the fintech space, where the governments of Sierra Leone, Kenya, and South Africa are the only governments that have created regulatory sandboxes where companies can innovate and test new ideas without having to go through the normal financial and regulatory hurdles. This makes it easier for the private sector to innovate and get to market fast enough to test whether their interventions, new products or services are relevant and effective in those spaces. Talking about innovation, Uganda is leading in terms of its national innovation framework. This is according to the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. And so we're in conversation with them to say, how can we build on what Uganda is doing to advance the other countries so as to provide a nurturing space for innovation. And last but not least, there needs to be some kind of incentivization for the private sector to also contribute to research and development. I'm not placing all the responsibility on the government side, but there's a need to step back and open up space. Right now, as a continent, less than 1% of GDP is spent on research and development. We cannot become producers in this new era without allowing for other actors to come in. What is the space for new forms of collaboration that has academia, government, and private sector collaborating to shape the innovation system and come up with new products?
Thank you. She deserves a round of applause. Dear participants, we will now allow for 3 questions that can be made. And I know there's somebody with a Roman microphone somewhere. So if you could please raise your hand, and in asking your question, kindly introduce yourself, and if possible, who the question should go through. So is there a question up front here? Oh, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, His Excellencies and Doctor. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Eric Annan. I'm from West Africa, Ghana. I'm based in Nigeria, the biggest economy in Africa and the biggest population in Africa as well. I have my thoughts. My question goes directly to His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone. I must say, but we need to be survivor, looking to the future of what we can do about the population that we have. And you have just touched a soul of what this continent represents. And I must say, this is the progressive leadership young people are looking for. We are not asking for money. We are not looking to use our muscles to fight. We are saying Africans, young people are smart. We have the brains. We have the energy. All we need is access. We are not going to take your place. Give us access to innovate, to create. This is what China did 30 years ago. This is what India is doing today. This is what Singapore did, and we can do it. I find it ridiculous to hear on BBC, CNN that Africa is poor when 65% of the world of wealth is in Africa. It's a shame, and I must say that we cannot continue to be ostrich and pretend nothing is being done. Technology is the only solution for Africa to take ourselves from this poverty-stricken continent. We are not poor. We need to change our mindset, refocus it to areas where we can be producers. My question to you, sir, what are you doing to bring about all your colleagues in West Africa, East Africa, North Africa? I must say, therefore, that East Africa are doing very well. I commend Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda. West Africa, what are we doing? Central Africa, what are we doing? South Africa, what are we doing? I challenge you, sir, to take this mantle up, because the young people are looking forward to you or your leadership to shape this continent. Thank you.
Honorable, please.
Your Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone, and the Right Honorable Prime Minister, I'm Honorable General Eli Tumwine, Minister of Security, and I cannot miss this wonderful opportunity to say what a great opportunity, because things happen when people meet, and things don't happen when they don't meet. I am an artist first and foremost by profession, and we talk about design. Design, values, and things. Everything has its own design and everything has its own value. And there is now a conflict between nature, stable nature, and agile innovation, where humans are pursuing to their limit of their knowledge, technology, since the beginning of fire. And as a result, they have destabilized, the human beings have destabilized the balance of nature's design. Because nature was designed in its perfect form for each living thing, unique in its own way, to serve a particular purpose. And as a result, it has caused threat to nature, and climate change is against us as a result of the speed at which technology is taking the world. To the extent that now, I've just come from an international security conference of 818 countries, where the identification of the threat to security in the world is internet. And where one individual now can be or can possess weapons of mass destruction. A one single person using internet. And cybersecurity now is threatening the rest of the world. And my question, therefore, comes from the scientific fact that for every action, there is a reaction. And when you grow old, you start going slower than when you are young. And this is for the young people. The African proverb, which is in the South African airport, says about people going together. They say, if you want to go very fast, if you want to run very fast, you run alone. But if you want to go very far, go with others. The purpose there is others will delay your speed somehow, but they will take you very far. And even in the military movement, we say the speed of the convoy depends on the slowest vehicle, so that you go with everybody. My question is, how are we going to balance the balance of nature and the speed at which agile innovation is taking us? Because we need to be a little bit cautious. How shall we balance that? While we have this huge young generation excited about internet and using it effectively to the threat of the rest of the world, of the rest of humanity, how shall we balance this so that whatever we are doing, we should be mindful of the security consciousness? Without going into details, we've gone to nuclear, and now nuclear is almost put aside, but the threat is internet, where those who possess the highest technology want to control, like Google is now 2.7 followers, and every other technology holder is trying to dominate each of us. How shall we balance, especially for Africa? I'm bringing this so that as we discuss this rush to follow technology, we are conscious of the dangers of technology and especially threats to nature. The statement I want to put to the young people is that my observation is that the farther we go away from nature, the faster we go towards self-destruction, knowing that all weapons are designed for human beings. How shall we balance the two? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Can they please give the microphone to the lady? We need to ensure gender balance. Thank you very much. The lady over there.
Hi, my name is Linda Bonyo. I'm a lawyer from Kenya. We run the Lawyers Hub that works on the link between law and technology. I have two questions to the heads of state. What are you doing about digital sovereignty, especially at the level of the African Union? Because we have a lot of young people who are losing their intellectual property to companies in Europe, and these companies require them to register their organizations abroad, but they operate in Africa. ideally making them foreign companies, and it's a requirement for some startup pitches when you go to pitch to investors that's a precondition. What are we doing about that? Two, we have brain drain now. We have a lot of Nigerians moving to Germany just for better prospects, especially for software developers. How do you nurture the environment at home to ensure that we don't have another movement of Africans to Europe again as raw materials, and then we don't have personnel to help us through the fourth industrial revolution? Two, issues of data privacy, data protection, and cybersecurity. What are the interventions at the African Union that you're doing as a collective rather than segregated efforts at national level? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, very, very last. There's a gentleman right in front of me over here.
Thank you. My question goes to Dr. Elsie Kanza. It's relating to an incident between China and US, whereby Google switched off Huawei from its network because Google controls that technology. So in relation to blockchain, I'm sure it is owned by someone outside Africa who controls it. So what don't you think after some time when we've relied on this technology as Africa, they are going to start controlling us again into another slavery because someone may be able to control us somewhere outside Africa? What do you have to say about that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think he deserves also his round of applause. Thank you very much. So now, in the concluding remarks, responding to everything you've heard, I'm going to ask, starting with Dr. Elsie, for each presenter to also respond on how do we deal with the issue of inequality and inclusiveness. We are all talking about industrialization and growth. We know one of our biggest challenges is doing so in a way that we do not leave anyone behind. And as the Right Honorable Prime Minister in Uganda normally says, not even the refugees. So starting with Dr. Elsie, responding to the questions there, your parting thoughts. How do we do this and get it right? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start with your last question and then address 2 points that have been raised by the audience. One, how do we deal with the issue of inclusivity in collaboration with the African Union Commission and the World Bank? We at the World Economic Forum are working with them to take a multi-stakeholder approach to achieving the digital moonshot that was announced, which was to ensure that every African is digitally empowered by 2030. The challenge that we have right now with different interventions is that they are fragmented. It is not clear who is doing what, where the gaps are, where there's duplication. And so we are working with them to introduce as well learnings from the rest of the world to see how we can develop a coherent framework for the continent that can help us accelerate progress and meet this goal. So that is something tangible that we're doing to ensure that nobody is left behind. There's a question about security consciousness. It's a chicken and egg situation. We can't afford to be left out of the new world where most of the value is being created in this world. So how do we balance security and innovation? Personally, one concern that I have when we're trying to get more goods and services online, including e-government, access to health, access to education, and we have governments shutting down access to the internet, you're disrupting the lives. It's disrupting employment, it's disrupting delivery of health services. So how do we find the right balance? We're not saying no protection, but we need to collaborate and co-curate to find the balance such that we're not left behind, because this is the new reality. We're no longer in the analog, we're in digital. We need to think differently and find a balance which is not leaving Africans out of what is a global economy. With respect to slavery, you're absolutely right. I get very agitated about ensuring that we have deeper conversations about the fourth industrial revolution and what they mean for Africa so that we're not left behind. If we are left behind, we become net consumers. There's no other way about it. You mentioned blockchain. Blockchain can be developed by anyone. It doesn't need to be developed by one part of the world. What you should be paying attention is the use cases. So if Facebook makes headway with Libra, what are the implications of that for our central banks, for our sovereignty? This is the challenge. So we also need to foster our own blockchain solutions that have a global reach to be able to balance out the interests in the global sphere, so to speak. With respect to Google switching off Huawei in the US, I'm not privy to the exact details, but what is definitely a concern is how we manage the jurisdictions for these technologies around the world. How we at the World Economic Forum are addressing this is through our Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which has branches in different parts of the world. We're in discussion, for example, with Uganda about how they can participate in that process. Sierra Leone, just an example, with our two leaders here, but also with South Africa, with Rwanda, Tanzania, Ethiopia. Those are the countries at the forefront right now, because everyone around the world is trying to figure out how to address the technology governance in this new era where technology is moving faster than policy. So it's not so much that we're following technology, but it's completely disrupting the structures that we have, which are not built for this era. And so the best way is for governments to work together with technologies from around the world to see what the implications are in their national jurisdiction so that we can develop global protocols that work for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think the questions or concerns raised right across the board are all interconnected. Fears about how the technology is going to disrupt the normal scheme of things. The thing is that the dinosaur is not around today because it failed to evolve. We as human beings are highly adaptive. We should wake up from the slumber and catch up with the rate at which technology is emerging and evolving. I think we have been sleeping. One of the speakers was right to say, we cannot control this technology. Let's create an enabling environment in which there will be checks and balances. But it has taken a life of itself. Human beings created it. But it is going at such a pace. Everybody, as we are speaking here, there are softwares being developed. Every day you put your phone on, new softwares are coming in. So we have to, as human beings, try to catch up with the rate at which technology is moving. We cannot, there are efforts, but these mostly futile. Now you have fake or deep fake, as you might have heard. That is even more threatening, where your face can appear and you actually say something that was never said by you. For us as politicians, that is threatening. But can I stop it? It's there already. So somebody can actually go and say the opposite of what you stand for in your face and image and coming from your own mouth. Am I going to look for that technology? No. This is why we have to put our heads together. And the organizers of this particular event have been smart concerning my brother's concern from Nigeria. How do we escalate this to the level of national leaders so they come on board fully? I am here, the Prime Minister is here, and this is how we stop the conversation around technology. Let's not put them in silos. Let's involve everybody. From you guys, the young guys leading this particular revolution to those of us who have to create the enabling environment and the legal and regulatory framework for it to function in a way that it is not going to be too disruptive. That is what we have to do. So there's a lot to be done at all levels. But for the most part, I think we had just left this whole revolution in the hands of the young people. And now we need to actually establish dialogue with them and see how we can work so that it will be for the good of Africa. We can take leadership, and we have to take leadership by investing in education that matters for the 21st century.
And now the last words from the Right Honorable Prime Minister.
Well, I'll make a couple of comments. The first one is on the point raised by General Tumwine on how destructive innovation can be, and he quoted the example of cybersecurity. I think basically cybersecurity and energy issues. Innovation basically takes a neutral position. It is on how you use it. Power, the discovery of power has made a huge contribution to assist mankind, not to destroy the environment. Because imagine we do not have electricity, and all we are doing, the numbers we have globally, we are still depending on firewood. I don't think there will be any tree still available in the environment. Therefore, it is how we use the innovations, the policies we have in place, and the regulatory mechanisms that we put in place. The second angle is on development in nuclear energy. These were great innovations. In science, great innovations. But you know what they did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? While that damage is great and is there, you also know what nuclear energy has done to save mankind in terms of energy requirements. Therefore, let us focus on regulation of innovation, and I think innovation will be more useful to mankind. The last comment I want to make is this. Scientific or innovative power. It is true Africa is weak, and therefore Africa's knowledge, innovations are being stolen in broad daylight. Actually, this is one of the most terrible robberies that are taking place, but not adequately articulated. Therefore, countries need to be vigilant. Africa as a continent needs to be vigilant and have a greater voice and greater control in ensuring that our innovations and innovators are protected and supported so that Africa's share of innovation, which is increasing, especially with the younger population and ICT, we protect this. And by the way, we are talking of poverty. This is going to be one of the biggest weapons to defeat poverty in Africa by more and more innovations which are protected so that Africa and African innovators can get the benefits.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wonderful ending. So we heard 4 key messages for us to take home. The first, the need for a clear vision, for policy cohesion and partnerships for results. The second, the need to recognize good practices and to scale up digital solutions in response to development challenges. We also heard a call for research research, research. Safe space for inventions, applications, and increase awareness so that Africa may become part of the producers. We heard for a call for the need to balance and to see how African values can inform regulation and policies. We also heard a very clear call for individual and collective responsibility to protect solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, as we thank this panel, and I now will invite them to come and sign and launch the Africa 4.0 initiative, allow me to conclude with a very simple quote from Nelson Mandela. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. So I call on all of you to make sure that as Africans, we may remain winners. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Can we give the moderator of this session, Rosa Olonga, a round of applause for getting us engaged and keeping us in that mode. So allow me to invite you, Your Excellency, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, to come and append your signatures to the launch of the 4.0 initiative, Africa. The Africa 4.0 initiative, and they'll be joined by the Minister Bahati at the signing. And this will mark, like we typically have, the Africa Blockchain Conference Declaration. Your Excellency, I must thank you very much on behalf of the many youth that are here for quite an inspiring presentation on what technology can and is possible of doing on this continent. And thank you very much for your insights. There we go, and we're getting the launch. The Right Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Bahati. And then Rosa. And then we'll have finally Dr. Elsie. And then we'll be upstanding for the anthems as we, organizing committee and the speakers, make themselves move to this, out of the hallway for the group photograph, the organizers and the speakers. So congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. You are witnessing the launch of the Africa 4.0 here in Kampala at the Serena. Can we be upstanding for the national anthems? Yeah, we don't need to, yes. We'll be upstanding for the national anthems in reverse order. Sierra Leone and Uganda. Thank you very much. We will allow our dignitaries to exit the hall. I'll request that we take our seats because I need to make these announcements right after our dignitaries have left us. So it is now 1:15. We have kept you seated for a very long time. And so we are going to have lunch for 1 hour, 15 minutes. We'll get back to the halls at exactly 3:30. These are the rooms that we are going to. Please take note of the rooms. Those of us that are interested in the pitching session, it will be right here in Victoria Hall. The pitching session right here in Victoria Hall. The people interested in fintech is going to be in Achwa Hall. It's on the next floor. And those that are interested in open governance, how do we make our governments open? Or how do we open the map? That is in Nile room, again on the next floor. And artificial intelligence is going to be in Addis Hall. Addis Hall, again on the next floor. We will have that session, the breakout sessions, run for 1 hour. I would like to request the moderators that whether you start at 3:45, you will be closing at 4:30. Or we will create a disruption in your room. We need to come back here to wind up the rest of the day. I wish you a good appetite, and please enjoy your lunch. And thank you very much for bearing with us this afternoon and morning. Thank you.